There's no baseball game on today. How weird is that? It's the first time in a long time we've seen, I guess there was one of the rounds. There was a break in between, but I digress. We have to wait till the weekend to have some new baseball games being played, but that doesn't mean there's not enough time to talk about baseball, the upcoming World Series matchup, and bring it up with my buddy right over there, Miller Thomas. This is the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. This is the podcast we talk about baseball all season long. There is no off year, and once a week we get together with this guy right over here from Locked On Diamondbacks to go along with me from Locked On MLB to have a little chat about the state of the game. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been doing baseball podcasts for a decade now, and this is now, I believe, original episode that I've hosted, number 2,851 in the last 10 years. You do the math. That's a lot. And I've been part of the Lockdown Podcast Network for the last 4 seasons. And you can follow me at Lockdown MLB Pods for this show, for Twitter and Instagram. There's my lower third. Call me Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And right over there, this Baja Kaloop is the host of Locked On Diamondbacks. Tell them about you.
Yeah, I'm, host of Locked On Diamondbacks, journalist, graphic designer. You can check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. Follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account on Twitter. Got to, of course, follow the show account too, Locked On Diamondbacks, Twitter, Instagram, on all your podcasting platforms. And hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks there. Don't forget to hit it on Locked On MLB as well to check out Sully Baseball.
That's right. And also, by the way, if you want to listen to, because yesterday, this show is being dropped on the 25th day of October 2022. Yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the Sully Baseball Daily Podcast, which I did every single day from October 24th, 2012 until April 2nd, 2017. So that was all those days, new podcast every single day, for 365 a year. And those are archived if you want to subscribe to those and listen to some of those. Some of them were topical and may not have survived that well, but some of them were evergreen. And we had some nice interviews with some players and comedians, authors, and I had some other thoughts. And you could actually hear an episode where I was recovering in the hospital after a procedure regarding a kidney thing. And I did part of it while on intense pain medication. I did some from baseball stadiums from New York. I did a bunch in Oakland. I did a bunch in London, including me in front of Buckingham Palace talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks. So There's a lot of things. If you want to go on wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Music or Google Play or wherever it is, you can go listen to that archive of, it's about, I think, like 1,700 episodes or something like that, both from the Daily Show and then it later became a weekly show. Just look that up at Sully Baseball. There's a lot of fun episodes on there. And if you like what I did at Locked On MLB, you can hear sort of the evolution of that. And I swear a little bit on it too, because it was, we weren't trying to sell Built Bars. So, I didn't care necessarily what people thought. But yeah, it had a lot of fun during those times. Okay. Hey, the funny thing is that the more things change, the more things remain the same. In that episode I dropped yesterday where I played the very first Sully Baseball podcast from October 24th, 2012, it was on the verge of the World Series. It was on the eve of the World Series. It had been, it was a back and forth postseason where a sub-90 win team was in the World Series, and the Yankees had just been swept in the ALCS. The more things change, the more things stay the same. And the Yankees got swept in the LCS. The Phillies somehow won the pennant for the first time since Ryan Howard collapsed in the heap at the end of the 2011 division series. And we have ourselves a Phillies Astros World Series.
I was not in my head, yeah.
Yeah, Phillies Astros World Series. Hey, Miller, tell me your thoughts on how the ALCS and the NLCS unfolded.
Yeah, quick question though for you, Sully. So your first baseball podcast started October 24th?
Yeah, the one that lasted for that I did every single day. I had dabbled in podcasts before that, but that was when it was really my show. I was the host. It was my feed, and I did it for years and years and years.
What a coincidence, because October 24th is also my birthday, Sully. So it's like we've been
What?
intertwined. It's like we've been intertwined our whole like baseball life, Sully. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, what?
Yeah.
I had no, you know what, folks, this is 100% honest. I had no idea.
Oh
Well,
my
happy Miller Day.
Yeah, thank you. That's how much he knows about me, guys. That's how much our co-host knows about me. It's okay. He didn't give me no gifts, but he said happy birthday on the pod. That's all that matters. But to the National League and the American League Series, I mean, I've been waiting to rip the Yankees for the longest time, Sully, because I haven't had a chance. I was celebrating my birthday this weekend. I was actually in Los Angeles, so maybe we should have done this show in person. I don't know how far you live from LA, to be honest, Sully. I know you live
Well,
out
my town I live on borders on Los Angeles, so
there. Okay.
I could be in Los Angeles by the time we're uh, before we have to sell some Built Bars.
Okay. Well, I'm back at home now in Arizona, so
Yeah.
we missed the opportunity in the mark there. But I've been waiting to rip the Yankees because what the Yankees did against the Houston Astros is honestly just flat out embarrassing to get swept by Houston. And it's not just the fact that they got swept, it's how they got swept. It's the little details in the sweeping. It's the complaining about the roof situation. It's getting Big Poppy to FaceTime you when you're down 0-3 and looking at 2004 Red Sox highlights. It's not being able to pick a shortstop throughout the series. It's what you did in game one with your bullpen. It's the whole shebang. It's overrating the amount of talent you have. It's not having the mental fortitude the Houston Astros have. There's so many things that went wrong for the New York Yankees in this series against the Houston Astros. And it's like, we all know that the Astros were probably the better team in this series. They had the better record than the Yankees, but this Yankees team did have the best run differential in the American League. This was a serious squad, a serious contender. We really thought they had a chance going into this series against the Astros. Even if we all like the Astros better, we couldn't foresee a sweep. We thought this would still be at least a competitive series. And once again, the Astros completely dominate the Yankees, and we got no excuses to talk about when it comes to cheating or anything like that, because most of those players aren't even on this Astros team anymore. We still got Altuve, still got Bregman, but a lot of the best players now are the Kyle Tuckers, the Jordan Alvarez's, the other guys that weren't the core pieces back then. So there's no more excuses anymore. And when you look at this Yankees team now, I'm like, where do you go from here? Because I'm calling for the heads of Aaron Boone and most importantly, Brian Cashman, because I believe it starts at the top. When you look at this Yankees roster, I thought they had a couple of, they have some talent. They got some studs with the Stans and the Giancarlo Stans of the world, with the Judges and the Stans of the world. But those ancillary pieces like the Houston Astros have with the Chase McCormicks and all these other players, the Yuli Gurriels, the Jeremy Peñas of the world, the Astros are able to have young, homegrown talent come through their system every year. They're able to player develop guys, and the Yankees are missing the mark on all of that when it comes to homegrown talent, when it comes to player development, scouting, picking out the right guys in free agency and the undervalued guys that you can bring into your organization and build up and turn into a contributor to your roster. Like, the Yankees aren't doing the little things. They're going out there, they're trying to spend money where they can on the big time free agents, but I look at this team and it's just not deep enough. They don't have the mental fortitude. Every time the Astros were up in the game or they were down, I always felt like they were going to come back or always felt like they were going to shut the door. The Astros have that killer mentality, and the Yankees do not. When I look at the Astros, I see leaders all over that team. And when I look at the Yankees, when they were down 0-3, who am I supposed to rally behind? Judge is an all-time great player. He's a Hall of Famer, but is he that vocal leader? I think he leads by example with his bat, but is he that vocal guy that could lead this Yankees team? I look at the Astros lineup up and down. I see leaders all over that, but I don't know if I feel the same way about this Yankees team. So there's so many question marks for this Yankees team heading into the offseason. I think it's disgusting that they got swept by the Houston Astros. So we can start there if you want and then move to the National League Series, unless you want me to keep going, Sully.
No. They'll have it all out. You hit so many points there.
Yeah, there's a lot.
The fact of the matter is that there was no excuses this time. I'm trying to bring up like, well, the roof was open or something like that, complaining about that. It's like maybe they didn't have to cheat in 17 or 19. You can't say anything about this team, and they manhandled them. Yes, the Yankees showed up and played hard in Game 4, but they also were sloppy. The ball dropped that Harrison Bader and Aaron Judge both going for the ball drops, and they not only they made mistakes that were sloppy, but the Astros capitalized on them. So Bader drops that fly ball, and the next batter hits a home run. Or Kiner Falefa is going too fast across the bag, and what could have been a double play, the ball gets past him. The next two, those two runners come around to score. It wasn't just that the Yankees did some things that were sloppy. It's that the Astros capitalized on them. The Astros made some mistakes too, but they let them get away with it. You never remember some of the mistakes a team makes if they get out of, if they wiggle out of trouble. And, there's also, I could do a whole week of shows of the reasons why I've been saying for probably most of the time I've been podcasting that the Yankees have to move on from Brian Cashman. And Brian Cashman, again, talented baseball man and everything like that, but he's been there since 1998. At some point, you have to turn the page. Think about all the things that were different in 1998 in baseball and baseball thinking. People were valuing RBI. This was before the Moneyball revolution began. This is before any real analytics came about. And look, I'm not a slave to analytics, but I'm also not one of these people who's going to scream, well, this just shows you the analytics don't work. Analytics is just information. That's all it is. It's information. And everyone has used it. Branch Rickey used information. Casey Stengel used information. And you have analytic departments who give the manager information, and the manager uses that for his advantage. Now, the Astros are one of the most heavily analytic-driven teams in baseball. So anyone pointing to, well, look, this analytics don't work. Really? The team that beat them uses them like crazy. It's what analysis you do. It's not, analytics is not like feng shui. It's not like something that has a definite answer to it. It's the people analyzing information and coming up with conclusions and coming up with data. Maybe, just maybe, other teams are doing it better than the Yankees. But the fact of the matter is that Brian Cashman seems to have had this force field around him where it's never his fault. It's the scouting department's fault. It's the analytics department, Boone's fault. But he's the head of this. And remember, Cashman was going to leave this organization in the mid-2000s if he didn't get full control. And so you have to really look at Cashman's tenure, not with the championships that he inherited the core. Yes, he was part of the team that developed it, but it's really been his team since around 2006 when he wrestled control away from the Randy Levines and everyone. And you have to take a look at who are the stars that he's developed since then. Judge? Fine, I'll give you Judge. You want to say Robinson Cano? Okay. You want to say Luis Severino? Okay. Is that it? Seriously. In a decade and a half, who are the stars that have been built up through there? What have been all the great trades? There have been a couple of good trades, but what have been the groundbreaking trades? Since 2006, the Kiner Falefa Donaldson deal, and then you've had in that period of time they've won one World Series, been to the World Series once, okay, in a sample size which is now since 2004, since the great collapse of 2004, they've been to the World Series once. Okay, we're approaching the 20th anniversary of that, of one World Series appearance in 20% of a century. And you also look at the fact, you were saying they're focusing on too many big-name free agents. I say, wait a minute. They didn't go after Bryce Harper. They didn't go after Manny Machado. What do they need? They need a big, huge bat in their lineup, and they need a solid shortstop. I wonder how those two would have been. They didn't trade for Cliff Lee. They didn't make the moves when you saw huge aces like Cliff Lee, like Roy Halladay, moving places, like David Price when he was bouncing around, moving from team to team. They didn't make the move for Chris Sale when he was available. And so a lot of times you see other teams making the moves that they didn't. They didn't go after Juan Soto. And yeah, their offense was a huge problem. And this is a poorly constructed team. And how do you know it's a poorly constructed team? The leadoff hitter was different every day. The starting shortstop was different every day. The lineup was different every day. The bullpen closer was different every day. You looked at the Astros, and the Astros took one look around and said, hey, this is our team. Altuve may be struggling. We're going to keep him in there. We're going to put this team. People knew their roles. And this is a bit of a whack-a-mole that's going on here. And this is not a small sample size. And if you're a Yankee hater, the greatest news you could ever hear is confidence in Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone. And I think that if Boone gets fired and is a sacrificial lamb, and since the Yankees won their first World Series in 1923, the only manager since that time, the only manager to manage the Yankees for 5 years without going to the not winning a pennant is Aaron Boone. He's the only one ever to reach 5 years and no World Series appearance and still have his job. But even if they fire him and they bring in, I always like one of Bruce Bochy's lieutenants, both Hensley Mueller and Roberto Kelly are former Yankees. If they bring in Charlie Montoyo, if they bring in whomever they bring in, or if they resurrect Casey Stengel, it won't matter because Cashman's still the person in charge of the team.
Yeah, I think they're tethered at the hip. I don't think you could fire one without firing the other because Aaron Boone is just basically the relay messenger for Brian Cashman and his front office boys because he's just doing what they say, like the commitment to Josh Donaldson, the I don't know who to go with at shortstop every night, the weird deployment of the bullpen. I think all that comes from the higher ups for the most part. I don't know how much Aaron Boone actually gets to make his own decisions when it comes to this team. So I feel like just getting rid of Aaron Boone is never going to solve the problem. And I don't even think Brian Cashman's a bad GM, but he's like you said, he's just been there way too long. I think he just run his course. I think if he goes somewhere else, he can once again rebuild a very good team and build another World Series contender. But we've seen the results for too long now in New York, and they just don't work. When's the last time you've looked at a Yankees rotation and they look stacked after that number one starter? They've had the Garrett Coles in that rotation for a long time, but when's the last time you looked at the Yankees rotation like we just looked at the Mets rotation or the Dodgers rotation this past year where you were like, man, they have 3 to 4 really good rotation members? When's the last time you looked at a Yankees lineup like how you used to back in the early 2010s where they would go 7, 8 men deep? Right now, after you get past like the Stantons, the Judge, and the Rizzos of the world, you're like, there's just not a lot of options in this lineup. And when you look at what the Astros did, like Altuve and Yordan Alvarez, they came through in the biggest moments, but they didn't really have great series offensively, like I talked about before. Jeremy Pena, the rookie, ALCS MVP, Chase McCormick, no one even knows who that is. Over 1,000 OPS and 2 home runs in this ALCS. Yuli Gurriel, over 300 average and 900 OPS in this series. Like, Judge and Stanton didn't have big series, and because of it, their offense did absolutely nothing. Tons of strikeouts, not a lot of bases. And for the Astros team, their 2 best players, their 2 to 3 best players can not even be in the game. You could take them out. You could take Altuve, Yordan Alvarez out of their lineup, and they can still put runs on the board, still play clean baseball, still get contact, still put runners in scoring position, and still manufacture runs. The Yankees seem like they can't do that without the use of the long ball, which it feels like the Yankees all their home runs come in Yankee Stadium. Like, it feels like these Yankees players can't hit home runs unless it's short little fly balls to the right field. So maybe we got to change this whole roster construction and change our perspective on how good a Yankees offense is in the regular season, because I'm starting to really think, I mean, we already know how much that Yankee Stadium could inflate it, but it really feels like a lot of their disparity between the regular season and the postseason could be due to the fact that they're not playing all their games at home like how they get to in the regular season.
Well, and also take this, for example, the Houston Astros. You got to give them all the credit in the world. I know there's tons of Astros haters, and I know a lot of Astros Twitters hates me because I dare bring up the fact that they're going to be the villains in many people's eyes in this postseason. You cannot take anything away from this team this year. You can't. This team has played under a tremendous amount of scrutiny, and if they veered anywhere away from them, people would have jumped all over them. And you know what? The way that they beat up the Yankees, like, oh, maybe they didn't have to use all those other things before. And also keep in mind, this team didn't waver, didn't falter. They won. What was the final? They won was 100 and what was the final win?
I think they won 106.
Yeah, well, whatever it was, they did so where they're currently on their longest winning streak. They didn't have a longer winning streak than 6 games during the year. So it wasn't like they had a stretch where they just ran the table and then sort of ran for cover. This has been a remarkably consistent team that has had some injuries, that has lost some of their players. They really could have used Michael Brantley a little bit. But one thing they do have is they have as deep a pitching staff as you could possibly imagine. They went against the Yankees, the big slugging Yankees, or supposedly, and held them to a whopping 6 earned runs over 4 games. 6 earned runs in 4 games. And remember, 5 of those came in game 4. Okay? Or maybe one of them, but they scored 5. The majority of those runs were scored in game 4. And when you take a look at the division series against Seattle, they had a fine, a 2.25 ERA in the 3-game sweep. But of that, 6 of the 9 total earned runs by that the Astros let up were by Verlander when he had his clunky start in game 1. The rest of the staff, obviously, they threw an 18-inning shutout on the road in Seattle. They went on the road. They shut out in over 18 in Seattle. They went on the road to the Yankees and shut them out in game 3, in a game which the Yankees desperately needed to have, and they had their ace on the mound. Everything that Dusty Baker is doing with this team is working. And it's about damn time Dusty Baker gets some credit for being a smart baseball man. So many times he's had the reputation of being, he's a player's manager, slap him on the back, but he makes a lot of dumb moves as a manager, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I know. He gave my father several strokes during his life when he was managing the Giants. He's unorthodox, but the teams win under him. And I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm actually rooting for the Astros in the World Series. I know I've just lost my cousins who grew up in Wilmington rooting for the Phillies may have thrown up in their mouth a little bit. But the fact, and if the Phillies win, I won't be sad. Okay, obviously, I have nothing against the Phillies. I was at a game in Philadelphia earlier this year, and I know all my Met fan relatives are going to slump thinking of the last 3 World Series champions in full 162-game seasons would be overachieving Nationals, Braves, and Phillies teams. That would be rough for the Mets. Look out for the Marlins winning the World Series next year. I digress. There's something about this Astros team that would be nice for the Astros fans and everything like that to have a World Series title that doesn't have a gigantic cloud looming over it, to have Dusty be the one to do it, and they have a shot to do something that has not been done in the wild card era, which is a perfect postseason.
That'd be crazy.
Only one team, and I talked about this the other day, only one team has in the division era, has a perfect postseason. It was the 1976 Reds. But that's when the NLCS, there was no division series back then, and the LCS was best of 5. So they swept a 3-game set against the Phillies and swept the Yankees at 4. So they went 7-0. Guess what? The Astros are already 7-0. And so taking a look at this team, they are a great team with incredibly deep pitching, and they were built that way. They were designed to have the pitching staff be strong, to have the pitching staff be deep, to be the pitching staff be 8 or 9 pitchers deep. So if one gets hurt or one falters, they can turn to someone else. It's not a coincidence that this team was able to throw a series where they threw 18 shutout innings on the road and were able to turn to a Luis Garcia who just kept throwing inning after inning after inning, out of the bullpen. It was Garcia, right? Garcia threw, he threw 5 shutout innings in relief in that final game. That they'd be able to have that depth. And the Yankees didn't pull that off. And in the end, it was the Astros who had that depth. And that's why I think they're going to win the World Series. That's why I think they're going to beat Philadelphia Also because they have the same. There's none of that one team's going to be over rest or not. They have the same amount of rest, and I think that the Phillies are going to be playing the role of the Colorado Rockies when they swept their way to the postseason and then met the Red Sox and met their doom.
Yeah, 9 runs to 50 strikeouts for the Yankees in the ALCS is just disgusting. I think I was listening to Lockdown Yankees with our girl Stacy on my drive, my 6-hour drive back from LA. And I think she had the stat Yankees first team in postseason history in a series to have at least 50 strikeouts and less than 35 total bases. So that offense went completely cold. And I have a question for you, Sully. Win or lose, do you consider now that they've gone to their 4th World Series, is this a dynasty what the Astros?
No, because the question mark hangs over the first 2. But it is a great run. Back-to-back pennants under Dusty, yes. But I'm not going to call a team where there's this question marks looming over their first title. If that's their only title is one that we know they were cheating, no, I'm not going to call it a dynasty. I'm going to say it's a great run.
If they win it, though?
What?
But if they win it, now they
if they win it, then I'm gonna put the majority of my attention on the back-to-back pennants that were won under incredible scrutiny under Dusty Baker.